going on? What has inspired you to come back to run for office?
Well, first and foremost is selection of candidates. Early on when the field was kind of stacking up and people were starting to look at who's going to run when, what's looking at for open positions versus, incumbent positions, there just wasn't what I consider a variety of candidates. And one of the things that concerned me as well was, as you well know, I ran in 2016 as an incumbent. And some of the individuals that took me out of that race are actually running again this year for saving their seat. And looking at exactly what they've done and what they claim to do back in 2016 for the people. And I think they've come up a little short on some of their promises to the citizens of Oro Valley.
What are some of the promises that they said that they fell short on?
Well, one of the big ones was that they were going to be independent. They were going to be independent thinkers. This was mentioned multiple times at forums, on their websites, that they were going to be different. They were going to look at all the options, and from what I saw was they just kind of rolled in with the council at the time, which was the Hiramath crew, as I called it, the Fab Four, and there really wasn't much of a change.
I had this discussion with Rhonda Pena over coffee in January because she thought I was probably too mean to her about what she doesn't do, and I said, well, tell me when you were a rebel with old Satish. Give me a rebel moment. You know what I mean? And she struggled to come up with one, basically, and they were all part of a lot of 7-0 votes slammed through with very little discussion. Yeah, and a lot of them came from boards and commissions, some of which were on our planning and zoning boards, and there wasn't a high density or commercial from a residential designation that they didn't approve. So, I think that the town really, is striving for balance. In the 8 years that I was on council, we were, in my opinion, trying to do that. We were looking at different solutions and options. And I think people need a voice. And I think the people's voices have been falling on deaf ears for quite some time. And there are people out there right now that are of the mindset that we're starting to move into infill with the community. And as such, that infill tends to be onerous because people have established themselves in neighborhoods, and the infill now is encroaching upon what they considered their open space. Now, we can all agree a lot of these properties are owned by owners, some of which have entitlement. But at the same time, you have to be balanced in your approach and look at all the different variables when you start to do construction. Tell me about the last 2 years. There's 4 new people, Hiramath, Hornat, Lou, and Mary got thrown out on their keisters by 4 all newcomers. What is the last 2 years, especially the golf course deal? What's your take on that? That was the issue that put him in office. No, it is, and as I said before, and I'm going to put it right out there so people understand, is I voted against the golf course, and the reason I voted against it is not because I didn't think it was of value. I voted against it because we were rushing the process. We didn't actually have a broker. We didn't have somebody representing us as a community. We didn't do our due diligence. There was other buyers that looked at this property prior to the town purchasing it, and they did do the due diligence, and they didn't follow through with the purchase. And I don't believe that we actually went through what I consider a methodical process in order to acquire this property. And, $13 million later since the purchase, we're still struggling to have an ADA-compliant facility. And, that's all water under the dam at this point. There's one thing. There's one thing I want to talk about the golf course deal when you were on the council and you voted against it. When that deal was being negotiated by the mayor and the town manager for months. As a guy who's was an elected official on that council, when did you find out about that it was actually we were trying to buy a golf course? When did you actually find out in relation to the vote? Pretty much when it was a done deal. Right. It was, in our opinion, and I continue to this day with the opinion that the mayor never had the authority to go through with the what I call the wink at the nod and the handshake agreement with the gentleman who, obviously is Humberto Lopez, who owns HSL. Now, of course, I always tell your listeners and you and everyone else that I talk to, follow the money.
And you've got to really look at the financials and look at the money, and you can see the contributions rolling in from, folks like Umberto and others who are in the development community and people that want to have, things and projects move forward.
So tell me about the last 2 years and what this current council has done with. They had an opportunity to kind of cut the bleeding on this golf course, and we know that a lot of the people, the green shirt mob, did a lot of, sad to say, and I think intimidated some bad decisions. What's your take on that before we go to break, and we'll do another segment together?
Sure. Very quickly, Chris, I think there was some of that intimidation factor. Now, do I agree with some of their points, as you call it, the green shirt mob? I do. I think there are some things that need to be looked at the facility. I have that on my webpage. One of those big ones that I feel strong about is the ADA compliance. I still believe that the Overlook restaurant being closed now is another eyesore or sore thumb, so to speak, that needs to be looked at. But at the same time, provide meals and amenities to people, like the Garden Cafe that was open when we first purchased the facility. So I believe that there's things that we can still continue to look at. There's still what I consider creative ways to manage the facility in such a fashion that's not going to continue to drain out our financials. I do know that several HOAs over there have pledged to give money to the town over a course of several years. And I'm always in favor of looking at other alternatives and options, and that does not mean completely shuttering the facility. I want to make that perfectly clear out there, that the facility needs to operate, but it needs to operate efficiently. And I don't believe that we've made those hard decisions yet to take a look at exactly what can be done to not only maintain the quality level, but also enhance the facilities to such a level that others will be able to use it other than just the golf community. And I think that seems to be the big problem. And even when I was out collecting signatures, I had run into several people that lived on the golf course, and they said, "Are you for or against golf?" And I said, "It isn't all about golf. This is a community center, and we have to keep in mind the focus being that we purchased it with that thought in mind. We didn't purchase it to have 36 holes, 18 holes, whatever the case may be, of golf. That just came along as one of the amenities."
All right, Bill, hold on. I got to go to break. We're talking to Bill Garner. He was on the Oro Valley Town Council for 8 years, and he is coming back. What's the website that people can check out about your campaign, Bill?
It's Garner, Garner, for FOR, OVCouncil.com.
Garner for OVCouncil.com. We're right back with Bill Garner running for Oro Valley Council. 8:22 in the morning. Ed Alexander, Chris DeSimone, Wake Up Tucson. Stephen Moore from the Commission to Unleash Prosperity. He's writes for the used to be a writer for the Wall Street Journal, and of course he's part of the Heritage Foundation with Steve Forbes and a bunch of guys. He's on at the bottom of the hour, currently talking to Bill Garner, who is running for Oro Valley Town Council. Bill, I had to FOIA the contract for the town manager, and if they don't do something with this lady by July 2nd, it looks like she gets renewed for another couple of years. What's your take on the performance of Ms. Jacobs?
I got some reservations. I think the concern that I've been seeing is that the communication with the public is really lacking. I know for a fact that there's been individuals that have tried to gain meetings and access to our town manager, and unfortunately the town manager was non-receptive in those engagements. It's really not for me because it's not my decision at this point, but it is really up to the council at large because, as you're probably aware, there's a hierarchy of structure. And the citizens of Oro Valley are at the top of that hierarchy, and then the town council, which is our elected officials. And then after that is Mary Jacobs, who is responsible for the rest of the staff and directors. So, I think it's important to keep in mind that, everybody needs to communicate and be available. And I think making ourselves available, especially now during this crisis with the COVID-19, we're starting to open up. Obviously, the town's lobbies are starting to open back up again. And as you mentioned earlier, our town businesses are starting to open and hopefully will continue to thrive and not suffer moving forward. So I agree with you. I think it's a decision that the current council really needs to make. And, they're on the ground. They see our operations every day. And I'm not really inside at this point to make an informed decision at this point, if I was to tell you an answer. But I think some of the anecdotal information I've been receiving from constituents that I've met with and other stakeholders is that, that would say that would be one of the key takeaways is the non-responsiveness and the access.
What do you want to get done? Give me, we got a few minutes here. Give me priorities. Give me your number one, number two priorities if you get on the council.
Well, I think the big pressing priority is what I consider the tale of two golf courses. I mean, you've got one golf course that the town has purchased for $1 million. And, to this date, they're about $13 million, pushed towards that facility. And then you've got another facility, Vistoso, which is gone fallow. And this facility's kind of been swirling the drain for several years. It was kind of in a situation about 2 years ago where everyone kind of knew that there was buyers around. There was people looking at flipping it off to another developer. There was all kinds of different things that they were looking at. And I think that's one of the big priorities right now is there's a general plan amendment. That general plan amendment has to be voted on by December of this year or the end of the year at some point, and I think it's been talked about being December. And there are what I consider avenues of opportunity for this facility. One of the big things is it was a desert course, so it wasn't a bent green fairway like Oro Valley Country Club or even the Elcon that the town owns. So because it was a desert course, and I've been there, I've walked the course, I've taken a look at the facility, and it's starting to go back to a Sonoran desert course. Now, granted, there's some non-native grasses and some other things in there that are starting to.
Hey, hold on for a sec. I got to interrupt you because I only got 3 minutes. I got one more question I want to sneak in before you go. And we'll have you on again. It's not like the last time I have you. But I want to get this. What does Oro Valley look like in the future? Because, we're talking about sales tax collection. We're still a sales tax collection town. And what is the future of this place? Is it no one wants an extra Oro Valley property tax. How do we do true economic development to at least create a bigger pie to get sales taxes off of? And I'll give you 2 minutes to answer that, Bill Garner.
Yeah, some of this information I've posted on my webpage, but at the same time, I think it's imperative that we continue to drive businesses to Oro Valley. We have to do that ourselves. We can't rely on organizations like the Sun Card or the Chamber and others. They're stakeholders. They assist, but it's really up to the town. We do have an economic development crew. They need to be put on notice that we need to start driving real business owners here to Oro Valley. Now, that can include small, medium businesses, but the big thing is Innovation Park, and we need to start moving in that direction, which has kind of been sitting for a while on the back burner. The other big thing is we got planning areas right now in our annexation areas. The town of Oro Valley actually has a planning area that takes them all the way down south to Orange Grove. There's a lot of retail. There's a lot of commercial. There's a lot of that sales tax dollars that we're still continuing to lose because it's in unincorporated Pima County. So there's specific areas that the town can continue to look at strategically and do what I call smart annexations. Now, you're going to hear it bantered about this 885 and some of these other things off the Tangerine Road corridor. But simply put, Chris, that does not bring any revenue to the town other than maybe some what I consider flat utility sales tax.
Right.
The big point with 885 is that we're the only municipality that can supply the water. So that's the reason why this big fight with Marana and Pima County and who's going to get it and all this. We have the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. We have the water supply. So why would we turn around, in my opinion, and get rid of the good dirt and basically make most of it residential? You've got to look at, other alternatives, other opportunities. And, state land has been in discussion with this. But simply put, it's not something that, in my opinion, is what I consider at this point a smart annexation. You're adding more rooftops. You're adding more bedroom community to Oro Valley, which was the mantra that they wanted to try and get out of. They always say, well, Oro Valley is a bedroom community. we need to start moving. If we're going to be bringing in, as more young families like we have to enhance our parks. We have to enhance the recreational amenities, all amenities, not just one facility. So I think it's important that we look at this and again, bringing additional commercial and retail. And that's the other thing at First and Tangerine. There's a general plan amendment to change the zone